Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. In this session, we're going to talk about an email I got from a guy yesterday. And it's really interesting because I've heard this before. And over the years, I'll hear it again. And he wrote and said, in essence, the email said that, why is it that when I'm looking for a job, I don't get calls and don't get invitations to interview like I do when I really have a job? All of a sudden, when I got a job, I get all kinds of people calling me, wanting to talk to me about interviewing and talk to me about their job. And it seems like there's a plethora of them when I have a job, but not when I don't have a job. Well, I thought I'd explain that. Looking for a job is emotionally difficult. Next to death of a spouse, death of a child, death of a parent, coupled with divorce, the fourth most emotional thing we do is look for a job. When you're looking for a job, it is paramount on your mind. It's the one thing, hopefully next to God and family, that you are focusing on. And you are sensitive psychologically to everything that happens. When you don't get an interview, when you can't seem to get an interview, when it doesn't seem to be working right, when you do get an interview, how you perform on an interview, it is paramount in your mind, and it is the most important thing one of the most important things that you're doing. So you're sensitive to everything. Why didn't I get that interview? I sent my resume. I'm perfect for it. They said they'd call me back. They didn't call me back. They said that it would be, I would hear from them in a few days, and I never heard from them, and on, because it's very important to you. When you have a job, you're focusing on having the job, doing the work, getting along with everybody and everything you do when you have a job, and looking for a job and getting interviews isn't that important. So you become much more uh, sensitive when you don't have a job to people not calling you, to the things that don't work out, than you are when you've got a job and it's uh, uh, minor issues of people calling you. There used to be I know once in a while I still hear it, that it's easier to find a job when you have one. And that's not true. It doesn't matter whether you have one or you don't have one. It's not necessarily easier or harder. It's just as difficult, just as much of a challenge when you have a job as it is when you don't have a job. In fact, sometimes it can be more detrimental. I've got one candidate now. He's a wonderful candidate, but he can never seem to find time to interview. So I get him interviews, and he changes them and he moves them around, and he becomes quite difficult to work with because he has to work around his job. Now, I understand that. You don't want to quit your job just to look for another one. But if you're out of work, it might be a little easier to find the time to interview. And psychologically, you feel more comfortable when you have a job and when you don't have a job. So when an interview comes along, you're more apt to take it in stride and not be as concerned or as emotionally distracted by the whole thing. So don't think that there is a difference between you having a job and not having a job. When you don't have a job, you're much more sensitive to the things that go on about interviewing because it's paramount in your mind. Whereas when you have a job, it's not something you're particularly interested in. People just don't interview to interview. Nobody really likes interviewing. It's a pain, and they will not react to it, real positively. I've never met anybody that wants to go on interviews just to go on interviews when they have a job they like and they enjoy. So there's no significant difference. It's your attitude and the psychological aspect of the having a job and being comfortable in it, and not having a job and being very uncomfortable there. We have a tendency in America to judge ourselves and others very much by the job we have. And it is paramount in our mind, especially if we have a family to feed and to subsist. So don't think that there's then going to be any difference. There really isn't. It may seem that way, but it's better to have a job because it's a little easier to psychologically deal with interviewing when you already have one and you're trying to find a better one. But sometimes the grind of a difficult job, a job you don't like, a job you can't stand, it weighs on your mind so much that it becomes a challenge in getting away from that job. So don't think that just because you have a job, it's that more jobs, more interviews come to you, more offers come to you, more opportunities come to you. You're just psychologically quite a bit different, different attitude towards it than when you don't have a job. So dispel that belief that it's easier to find a job when you have one. It's easier to psychologically accept the fact that you have a job and that you need a new one. But it's not necessarily easier. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashir with the Job Search Solution.